Today, I have the opportunity to welcome Jim and Marla West to the Leading Saints podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good afternoon.
Now, you two are in Salem, Oregon. Is that right?
Yep.
Awesome. Great part of the country, I hear.
Oh, if you don't mind rain, it's fabulous.
It's beautiful.
That's awesome. And what happened is I put out every week. I send out the newsletter that goes out every Tuesday or Wednesday, and I usually put a question of the week in the newsletter, and it is as random as can be, but all falling within the realm of church leadership. And so I have a 3-year-old girl who's so sweet, and every week after sacrament meeting, I walk her down to nursery, and some weeks she'll run in there, other weeks she'll grab onto my leg, but nonetheless, I think generally she loves nursery. So I thought, I wonder if there's some best practices people have out there as far as succeeding as either the nursery leader or a nursery teacher. And so I put the question out there: what are some best practices for nursery leaders or those who run the nursery? And Marla, you sent me a list. I mean, a point-by-point list of some suggestions you found. And so I was intrigued. And then you told me that you and your husband both have 27 plus years of nursery experience, right?
Yeah, we do. We do.
She's done it more than I have, but I've been in there for, I don't know, seems like about 20 years probably.
Okay. And why is that? You just have the nursery leader look?
Yeah, I think that's it. No, we have sons, a lot of sons, and when they were little, they would not go into nursery without one of us there. And eventually, 40 years ago, I was called to serve in nursery for my son's sake. And ever since, we've just loved it.
Wow. That's awesome. And over the years, picked up some best practices that serve you well. And you were just recently released as from the nursery. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I mean, how would you? And feel free, either one of you, to chime in when you feel so inspired. But where would you set the groundwork or the foundation of this discussion about leading in nursery? And again, it's one of the nursery leaders, one of the few callings like music leader that has the actual word leader in it in the title. So what advice would you start with somebody who's just starting as the nursery leader or starting in the nursery?
Well, for one, I think you need to read the manual that the church puts out. I actually, even though I've put in about 27 plus years, every time I'm called as nursery leader, I reread the manual. Mm-hmm. And I want to be up to date with what the church's vision is for that group.
Yeah. And when you say the manual, is that in the general handbook in the primary section, or is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, there's a book just for primary for leaders, and we have a section for nursery leaders and teachers. And I always go back to the basics and get that down and remind myself of the church's vision for nursery.
Yeah.
I think that vision is really that it's more than toy time. It's more than a place for parents to drop the kids off just so that they can escape to an adult class kind of thing. I believe that the vision for nursery is really that it's a sacred time for children to become introduced to a more formal gospel experience where they learn how to come, feel the Holy Ghost, be eager to participate, actually look forward to it. And that it's a real class, not just toys and snacks. And so by having that sort of approach to it, it really helps kids, I think, prepare themselves for the primary experience, where they sit in chairs and they sing and they are with lots of other children.
Yeah, that's, I mean, so easy to overlook, but it's so true because as a parent, sometimes I feel like, I got to get to Sunday school. Here's my child type of thing. But,
Right.
but yeah, and I appreciate those and my current nursery leaders. They do such a good job with, I peek in there from time to time and they're sitting on chairs or there's some structure to it. Right. And so that's important to begin introducing that in a church setting to those young hearts and minds.
Yes, and a lot of people are unaware that you can start that structure very young.
Hmm.
That when we teach nursery, we expect the kids to follow the structure we've set up, and children thrive on structure and consistency. So when we have the same kind of module every week that we follow, they're good with that. They like it. It makes them feel secure. They're ready to come in. They know what's coming.
Yeah, and I would imagine that really helps in the long term. As I think we all go through it as parents, where the child for a while does just really has a lot of anxiety being left in there from apart from their parents. But that structure and familiarity and consistency can really do a lot to help a child feel welcome.
Yeah, it does. And in the past, we've had some children who are reluctant to come for whatever reason. And we will actually go visit them at their home
Oh, cool.
and maybe bring a treat or a game or play with them with a toy that's familiar to them. And we kind of engage with them the same way we would in our class. And when we do that, the children are much more eager and ready to come to nursery.
Yeah. Wow. What a great. I mean, it seems so like why haven't I thought of that or anybody else? But that's so practical, but so true. Just
Yeah,
giving them coming into their world first, getting them comfortable with you, and then inviting them into the church world. So
exactly.
awesome. Anything else when it comes to like the vision of nursery that we want to make sure we discuss before we move on?
Well, I think another thing that Jim and I talk about a lot is this pertains to church culture.
Hmm.
Like Jim had mentioned, a lot of the church culture, the church members' idea about nursery is toys and snacks. But
Yeah.
we also noticed that when you hear the vernacular that surrounds talking about nursery, people will often make the judgment that nursery's at the bottom and
Mhm.
being the prophet is at the top. And there's and we
I'm
hear this.
guilty, Marla. I'm guilty. I've done so many interviews, and I always use this nursery as a scapegoat. As like, well, of course, never nobody wants to work in the nursery. I admit it's
Well,
not my
right
like number one calling, but you're right. I should. I repent publicly right now.
there you go. We appreciate it. But we hear this a lot, this idea of all the way down from the nursery up to the prophet, everybody's important. And I think, wait a minute, you don't put nursery kids on a bottom rung of the ladder. That's just not where they belong.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to see that change in the church,
Mm.
that idea that serving in the nursery is somehow takes less spiritual energy, less listening to the spirit, or less intelligence, I guess, than any other calling. It's just not true.
Yeah.
When you're in nursery, it takes just as much preparation and feeling the Holy Ghost and knowing what each child is going to need. That is just like any other calling.
Oh, I love that. I'm so glad you highlighted that.
And I think you know that you've been successful when you have parents say that as soon as sacrament meeting's over, or the kids are running for nursery, or during the weekday they wake up and say, "Is it Sunday?"
Yeah.
And that's the experience that we try to have for the children.
Mhm.
Love it. That's awesome. Do you want to just maybe we'll take the whole just experience of nursery from walking into the door from the parent pickup and just see what best practices come up or principles? Is that a
Yeah,
good way to do
let's
it?
do it. Hmm.
Cool. All right. So sacrament's over, sacrament meeting's over. The parents are headed your way. Where do you begin with some ideas?
It, Actually, the experience for us started uh, an hour plus ago. In that we got there ahead of sacrament meeting, set everything up. The table's all ready to go. the Play-Doh's out, all the other stuff, so that the music's ready to go, so that by the time the children leave sacrament meeting, they're walking into a room that's ready for them. They can hear the quiet music. They feel comfortable. Hey, there's interesting things there. I can come sit down. I can begin to kind of engage with us as the teachers. And that would be the beginning.
Yeah, that's so true. Because you think about any other, second hour meeting, if I walk in as an adult, I walk into Sunday school and the teacher's not there, it's fine. It's like, no problem. They're probably gathering some items or whatnot, and I can sit here until they're ready. But for a child, it's going to mean a little bit more when they walk in and actually see their nursery people, right?
Exactly. And not only do they see us, but we're already engaged in the activity we're inviting them to do. So when
Oh,
they
yeah.
come in, one of us is sitting at the table, and we always start with Play-Doh simply because it's a great draw you in activity. One of us is already sitting at the table interacting with the Play-Doh.
Oh my
When we
goodness.
see them come to the door, we ask them to come play with us.
Yeah. Isn't that because usually it's like, okay, I'm going to set you down, child, and now I'm going to exit as quickly as possible. It's like that first moment can feel like this is the part where I get abandoned, okay, and cry until I forget about it. But to make it the part of the where we play, and here it is. Look, he's already playing. Walk over to the table, jump in, grab some Play-Doh.
Yeah. And we don't shut the door. So we've noticed over the years of doing nursery that when we would shut the door, children would feel trapped, like their parents were in another world and they were in this world. So we quickly figured out that if we prop the door open and they can see their parents standing in the doorway, and we say to them, you may leave anytime you'd like. You don't have to stay here, but we think you'll want to stay here because we're having fun. So the door stays open.
I think in
Yeah.
all those years, we've probably only had 2 or 3 kids that actually would try to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The runners, right? Sometimes you get the
Right.
But it's very, very few. Once after about 2 weeks, they realize it's a safe place, and they might go to the door and even step, out and look around a little bit, but then they come back.
Oh, that's such great advice. Okay, so that's sort of you're there, so you're sort of you start off with some play, and I think there's some things you do with just the music and sort of the environment as a whole that's welcoming them, right?
Yeah, we do. We do put on some kind of classical, or I would call it spa type music, but we never put music on with voices. And this is an important thing because some nurseries have encouraged the leaders to play the primary music, which is fine during other times of the day. But we have found when we welcome them in, they need to feel like there aren't so many children in the room. And when you play music with voices, psychologically, it sets the child up for more people in the room than is necessary. So we don't. We play music with no voices until we have a singing time moment because they need to know who they see there is who is there.
Yeah.
And so we do that. And then we do also something a little unique in that we pick a scent for the children. We spray it in the room, and it has to be a natural product like orange oil with no chemicals, no possible allergens. And we spray it in the room so that when they come in, they immediately connect that scent with their experience. Because, brain research shows us that olfactory senses are the only ones where memories are not routed through any other brain system. When it comes through the nose, it goes straight to the brain for memories. And so that's why when you smell a certain scent, you're immediately taken back
Yeah,
to a
easy.
time in your life. And we've had primary children later come to us and they'll smell the scent in the church and they'll say, oh, nursery. And that's what we want.
Yeah. 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 And so the one thing I want to highlight here that I hope that people don't see the title of this episode and skip over it if they serve an elders quorum relief study, because these are great ideas, but so applicable no matter where you serve. Like there's
Oh,
no
yeah,
reason why you couldn't start elders quorum with a certain song playing, or just some environmental cues that really
absolutely.
shift the brain in a way that helps them be more present in that meeting. Right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
totally is applicable. Any kind of thing that helps the brain to absorb information and to have a good experience, I say it's should be ubiquitous to
Yeah.
all groups in the church.
I think one of the challenges we've had is that with the new format, where
Mm.
nursery is now only an hour, it used to be almost 2 hours, and it's actually hard for us to fit everything in that we would like to do with the children.
Oh, wow.
To be able to
Yeah.
sing, to have a snack, to introduce maybe some larger, small motor skills, help them learn how to use scissors or do watercolors or a variety of the different things that we would try to introduce to children. Um, it's hard to find to fit it all in.
Yeah, there's not
Yeah.
enough time anymore. We liked the old way where nursery was 2 hours long, but it was the perfect amount of time to be able to introduce all these new skills that revolve around the spiritual topic of the day that we're teaching from the manual. And
Yeah.
now we have to condense it. We got to be on our toes
Yeah. I
now.
bet.
So,
I bet. So how did you learn all this stuff? Do you have a background in some of this stuff, or?
oh, well, Jim's an
Uh,
engineer. Engineers do all that.
Actually, Marla's more of an educator, so a lot of these things came from her.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And I'm sure a lot of trial and error as well as you were working with kids and learning some things. And so
Yeah.
that's awesome. So I love this. So it sounds like that play time, sort of the free play time, is generally just at the beginning. For how long would you say that lasts?
15 minutes or so.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, with the new format being less than an hour really in nursery, most Sundays we actually don't even get the toys out.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd say we probably only pull toys out on holidays, like when we were preparing a Mother's Day project with the kids. While we were working with each individual child, the other children needed something to do. So we actually let them pull out toys on that Sunday. But most of the time, we don't have time for toys. There's no time for that now. So,
Wow, that's such a paradigm shift with nursery. I love that.
Yeah, they don't
right.
even ask.
Yeah.
Although we do get them out because one of the favorite things the kids like to do is wash the toys.
That's our service. So when we have a lesson about Jesus teaching us to serve or him serving others, we will bring in some big, huge bins of warm water, and the children get to wash the toys. And
Uh-huh.
that's their service to the ward.
It's one
Nice.
of their favorites.
So at the beginning, when you mentioned like the Play-Doh, for example, the Play-Doh, you don't really necessarily consider that toy time. It's just like focus playtime on Play-Doh, right?
Yeah, that's just the attention getter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else we left out as far as that first part? That first 15 minutes, or?
We don't let parents come in and visit with us. They're welcome to come in. Anybody's welcome to come and visit nursery. But
Uh-huh.
our number one cardinal rule about nursery is don't talk to us when we're in there. And the reason we started this is because we noticed at one point when people would want to come in and visit with us, we lost the kids' attention. They
Oh yeah.
started acting out and there was more conflict. But when we cut out adult visiting, the children were so much more peaceful and focused and just ready to interact with us. So we have a rule actually. It's don't be offended, but we're not going to talk to you.
And is that just you just verbally communicate that, or post a sign, or what?
We've done both.
Mhm.
And Jim and I, we don't visit with each other. Now, we've been
Yeah.
married 42 years, but we make it a rule. The only time we visit with each other in nursery is when we're talking about a child or to a child. Otherwise, we don't visit.
Yeah.
It's not a social time for adults.
Yeah. And again, you're creating an environment, a structure for those children to be blessed by the doctrines of Jesus Christ, right? In their own special way.
It's so hard for people, though. We've had even church leaders on a stake level come in and start visiting with us, and we'll warn them ahead of time and say, please don't take offense, but we don't visit in there. It's a real classroom with a real lesson, and the whole day is for the children. It's not about us.
Yeah. I guess it would be extremely awkward if somebody walked into Sunday school and started talking to the teacher while we were.
That's what we
We'd be
said.
like,
We
"What are you
said
doing? Get out of here!"
you wouldn't do that in Relief Society. Just walk in and,
Yeah.
hey, let's talk.
Right.
So,
All right. Where do you want to go next? There's a whole list here. I want to make sure we at least touch on each one of these here. But what rings true next?
Well, we do transitions, of course, like any nursery leaders do. When it's time to move on to a new activity, we'll sing a song. Um, we'll get them engaged somehow. Let's do this. And they get excited. Or we'll ask them a question, say, I wonder if there is something outside. Well, that's our cue to go outside. And we'll do lizard hunts outside with toy lizards. Whatever goes along with the lesson that we're doing for that day. So we do give them transitions from one activity to the next, but they kind of know what's coming because we pretty much keep to the schedule of welcome them in, go to snack and story after Play-Doh, go to a singing time, go to a lesson, and then an art project that reinforces the lesson. Large motor activity, small motor activity, different things, but they know what's coming because after a couple Sundays in there, they basically know the routine and they like it.
so when it's time to transition to snack and story, we will sing a song, and then as soon as the Play-Doh's all put away by the kids, then Marla will take hand sanitizer and make happy faces on the table. And the kids know that that's how you wash the table. You've squirted the hand sanitizer, and it could be a smiley face, it could be a frowny face, or, the kids tell us what kind of face they want, and then they smush the hand sanitizer around and then take a paper towel and clean it. So then they've cleaned the table and they're ready to go to eat. And, and that's how we transition to having a snack.
Wow.
And sometimes we've asked the parents to bring the snack in, which is not generally church policy. Usually the church likes the ward to supply the snack. Sometimes, like on special birthdays or holidays, we'll ask the parents to bring the child's favorite snack along with the child's favorite book. And that way the child gets highlighted that day. And then we read that book to the children while they eat. So whenever they're eating, we're reading to them so that they get to focus on two things. And that's a real skill change, to be able to focus on two things at once. That's a step up from a toddler or a baby to a nursery age child. So that's kind of cool.
Wow. I love that. Just those little personalizations there that help the children be seen as individuals, and share that with others. That's great.
And I noticed one mom did a really cool thing for snack time. And she brought in a whole muffin tin that had like 24 muffin holders in it. And she had put different snacks in each one. And I asked her why she did this configuration. And she said, what kids like the most is to be able to choose. So she would hold out the muffin tin and they got to pick from the tin of what they wanted and how many they wanted. And that was so thrilling for them to just be able to choose their own snack was pretty cool.
Yeah. Again, so simple and just giving them choice because I know a lot of things. I make the choice for my 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So you've moved on from the Play-Doh time, and then you talk about transitions, which I appreciate. Is it? And it's not always a song. It may just be you saying, "Hey, I have an idea. Let's see what's outside." Or is that the idea?
Right. Or sometimes we'll say, look at the clock. And all the kids will look at the clock and I'll point to it and talk about how the clock tells us what time it is. And so we'll say, well, now it's time for, and we'll move on. Or Jim usually does the lesson for us. So Jim will all of a sudden ask a question or hold up a picture, something to get their attention and say, I wonder what this picture is about. And then we gather the children around him and he gives the lesson about, the scripture or the principle that we're talking about.
Yeah. Now, it's been a few years since I've been in primary in general, let alone nursery. Is there a formal like lesson book? Do you use the same thing that the other primary kids are using as far as what the lesson is that week, right?
Yeah, there's a manual and they have the lessons laid. The church has the lessons laid out week to
Okay,
week, and we use that.
gotcha. So, and speak to me about the lesson then. What does preparation look like? I mean, obviously you don't have to prepare like you do if you're teaching, Sunday school, but what does that look like?
Well, you kind of do, but we've had it so prepared. We have a big fat notebook of all the lessons over the years. So, we have usually an object that's an attention getter. Like if it's taking care of your body, Jim will bring a basket with a lid on it, and then he'll slowly open the lid to get their attention. And then they'll look inside the basket and they'll pull out things that help us take care of our bodies, like a Band-Aid, a toothbrush, an apple, different things like that. So usually Jim brings an object or a picture to start the lesson. And that's kind of how we engage them in talking about what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I imagine, Jim, you use maybe that basket for several different type of lessons. If it works to fit an object in there, is that the idea?
Yeah, yeah. And Marla's, like she said, it's got this huge notebook with every one of the lessons that has, here's what the lesson could be or would be, and here's some thematic activities that could be coupled with the lesson to help reinforce it. So after we've had the lesson, then there's one or two other things that we can do, and with the 1 hour format now, by the time we get that done, we're pretty much out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the lesson is sort of the wrap up portion of the time.
Well, we do usually an art project afterward to
Oh, okay.
reinforce the concept, or when the church had the 2 hour nursery time, we used to also introduce really fun skills. Like during October, we'd have a piece of paper with a spider on it, and the kids would practice cutting the path of the spider with their scissors. Scissors, a lot of manipulatives, those are skills they need to have for primary as well. I know we think more of the spiritual ideas, but a lot of the spiritual things they hear in nursery will be repeated in sunbeams. But they need to have a lot of these skills down so that when they go into sunbeams, they feel confident. They know the difference between markers and crayons. They know how to work a paintbrush and a watercolor set. They know how to use scissors. They know how to sit in their chair for an extended period of time. Those are all kind of practical skills, but they need to have them for sunbeams.
Yeah. And I know with my kids, we haven't sent any of our kids to like a preschool. Usually kindergarten is their first formal education experience. And so the only other place for them to pick that up, obviously at home, we got different crafts and things, but also, at church, again, it's a structured setting that they can begin to acquire this familiarity.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's kind of fun for us too to push their boundaries of skills. Like sometimes we'll have a lesson on the prophet. And one time when we did that, we brought some black construction paper and some white chalk. And then Jim showed the kids how to draw a portrait. So they were drawing the prophet, his face, but Jim would do an eye, and then they would do an eye. Jim would do the mouth, they would do the mouth. And we kind of really like to push their skills, things that with a little scaffolding from us, they would be able to do it. They wouldn't without us, but we like to do that because once we push their skills into that area of new level of skill, they really engage. They are really hooked. Once you can get them to do something that's hard for them, but they can do it if you help them, that's that. In education, they call it that zone of proximity or proximal development. That just means they're in the zone. They could do something really exciting and new to them if they had your help. We really like that. We like the zone.
We also sometimes will, like once a month, send home a, a lesson that they can use for family time, that goes with the nursery lesson so that, the family can actually see what happened in nursery
Mhm.
and then maybe extend that learning at home.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to go back to your binder, Marla, because I think people are gonna be headed to Oregon in search
Right.
to rob you of this binder. Um, and I imagine it's all. I mean, you don't have anything online that you could share, but what would you say as far as like for people making their own binder, for nursery leaders making their own binder? Like, how do you do that? Do you find things and then put them in there for later? Is it just okay? This next week we're talking about nature, so I'm going to gather some thoughts and then just put it in my binder. How did you develop this binder?
Yeah, I kind of just I went through all the lessons that the church has in the manual, and I would type up the lesson, and then on a Google Doc or something, and then I would just start brainstorming kinds of skills and activities that I thought a child would engage in that surrounds that topic. Then I just start typing them up, and then I put them in a paper or a plastic sheath, and then I put art materials and all kinds of pictures and ideas in there. And over the years, I just kind of weeded out. I'm really a minimalist, so I don't keep a lot of stuff. But when I go to teach that nursery lesson, or we go for that nursery day, the binder tells me everything. It tells me the first activity we do, the second one, the lesson, what information I'll need, what materials I'll need, etc. And after doing it that many years, you kind of have a good sampling of a variety of stuff.
Yeah. So the principle really is that, there's not like Marla has cracked the code on nursery binders, but you have a system that works for you.
Yeah,
And that binder's sort of that center point of it all, that you know that you're going to go there and you have it organized a certain way, and you'll find the information you need to execute the next lesson, right?
exactly.
How many, like, on average, just over the years, how many kids are you talking, like, in the nursery with you at one time?
It depends on which, where we've lived at the time. We really like sizes of 8 or less. We feel like once they get much more than that, it really starts stressing the kids out.
Mm,
And adding just another adult to a room with more than that is can be quite chaotic. So
yeah.
we've really tried to, work with nurseries that are, 8 or less. I will say that we did have one nursery where we had 8 or 10 little girls. It was all girls. They were all blonde little girls that loved pink. And anything that came out that was pink was a
Oh boy.
major battle because every girl wanted to have the pink thing. And so we had these little carpet squares that the kids could sit on for certain activities. And we ultimately had to throw everything away that was pink because it was way too much stress
It was
for
too
the poor
chaotic.
little girls that just loved
No, we
all
don't
these.
blame you.
We
Yeah.
said no more pink in nursery.
Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. And I know, like, my church building, we before our ward split about a year ago, and so we had two nurseries, at that time, and we had two different rooms with toys in it and whatnot. And so I think it's good for leaders just to feel like, yeah, you can split up a nursery so that there's not, you know 25 little kids in one. And some of it, especially in Utah here, in Harriman, or you get huge amounts of children, and so you have to be intentional. You can't just say, well, let's just keep adding adults until they can manage the circus, so.
Yeah, it's really, really great when one child shows up.
Mm,
And some people have said to us, well, just don't do nursery that day. Just send them to be with their parents or whatever. And we're like, are you kidding? This is like grandma and grandpa spending time with a grandchild. There's no
oh, that's
way
cool.
we're giving that up.
Yeah.
So we've had really fun when even just one child shows up.
Yeah. Awesome. So, all right. So you got your lesson, and then you do sort of an art project, a craft project to sort of wind down the rest of the time, right? Any general advice that way?
We just really, like I said before, we like to push them. And for some children, like when you pull out the watercolor set for each child, for some kids, this is the first time they've ever seen that. So we do a little kind of song where we dip, dip, dip in the water with our
Mm,
paintbrush, and then we dip, dip, dip in the paint. And then we show them how to paint because some of them, they take the paintbrush, and they'll stick it in their ear, they'll stick it in their mouth. They just, they just don't have it down yet what that's used for. So some of the activities we do are simply exposure and instruction. What is a paintbrush? What do you do with it?
yeah.
So it takes longer to do an art project than you would think. If you just pull out paper and crayons, which is okay, but a lot of children that age have seen that before. So we try to pull in materials, glue sticks,
Mm,
scissors, pasta to string together, things that children have not maybe thought of or been introduced to before. So the art project can be pretty time consuming.
yeah.
One thing I don't want to forget to mention, which is kind of unrelated to everything we've talked about, it's
Okay.
just a tip. It's just a tip that we found really handy is you always have those unexpected moments when a kid needs to go out to maybe have a diaper change or things like that. And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
So we basically have all the phone numbers for all the parents. And when a kid needs to go out momentarily, we text a parent. And so they can just be sitting in Relief Society or Sunday school, get a text and go, oh, hey. And, and so we sort of train the parent, keep your phone, keep an eye out for that. And that way we never have to leave the room or go down the hall or find a primary worker to help us hunt down a parent. We just text them and they come in a couple of minutes later and take care of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. And then I was going to ask you that. I'm glad you brought that up because it was funny. A few weeks ago, went to church. My wife was either out of town or sick or something, so I was the only parent there, and I was teaching deacon's quorum, and my daughter had a dirty diaper, and so they came in. I'm like, okay, hold that's this thought, deacon. I gotta go, change the diaper here, and then get back to it. So, yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up because that is a component that every week there's probably somebody stinking up the room, So
So handy tips.
what would you say about maybe whether it's the the pink carpet square that riles everybody up, and suddenly you got a little bit of a fit, happening, or a fight, or somebody just is emotionally spent and having a hard day and crying and throwing a fit.
Well, we do put out a blanket in the corner of any nursery room, and we put some books out there so that anytime a child that wants to disengage, they can. They get to curl up with the blanket, read a book, maybe just lay down or whatever they want to do to rest or to disengage. A lot of times, one of us will hold a child, just hold them, because they're having complex emotions that day.
Mhm.
Sometimes we will go and get a parent if the child will usually let us know if they want their mom or dad.
Yeah.
And we do encourage the parents to stay in nursery when they're first bringing their child to nursery. We don't want the drop off. We don't want them to drop and run. The first
Mhm.
few Sundays, we actually asked the parent, could one of you stay and enjoy our day with us so that your child sees that you accept nursery, you like the nursery leaders, ergo, the child will.
Yeah.
Again, though, the biggest problem we have is the parents want to talk with us.
Yeah.
And we have to say to them, sorry, this isn't about us as
Yeah.
adults. And I think that's one thing that holds people back from accepting a calling in nursery. So I think so many adults have said to us, how do you do nursery that long? Like, we'll do it for 5 or 7 years before we have a break. And they'll say, how do you do that? It's so boring. And we say to them, If nursery is boring, it's because you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right, you will love it. If you're doing it wrong and it's not serving them, it's not serving you, you should feel very peaceful, very satisfied, very content as an adult when you leave nursery. The children, we're hoping they'll feel that way, but we want adults to feel that way when they serve. But if you're just going to go in and throw some toys out and some crackers on a table, nursery is going to be really boring for them and for you,
Yeah.
because kids have toys at home. I mean, they can go home and do that. Nursery should be something where, like for adults walking into the temple, it's a sacred place. Everything changes. Your voice changes in the temple. Your clothes change. You act differently. But we expect that in nursery. You know, the kids come in, and if they want to yell and scream and run around, we have to remind them this is nursery. And they pretty soon they get it, that this is a different place. You know, one thing we used to do that was really fun when we had the 2-hour schedule is when the kids would first come in, we would write a word on the chalkboard. And it was a word we selected from the lesson, like Alleluia. And we'd write it on the board and we'd say the word several times. And we'd say, this means yay. And so all throughout the day, we would use this word. So if a kid did something really cool, we'd say, Alleluia. Or if they shared a toy, Alleluia. And by the end of that Sunday that we did that, the kids were repeating the word and taking it home. And the parents would tell us later, what's with this word? We used to call it the word of the day, but we don't have time for these things anymore. We've
Yeah.
really had to condense. But it was
No, that's great.
fun. It was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fun.
That's awesome. Any advice you'd give as far as special needs kids? Has that come up much at all in your experience?
We've had a few, and those definitely are more challenging. We had one in particular where that was one of those times where we did have to close the door.
Hmm.
So we found that most of the kids, and we haven't had a whole lot of that, but our experience with those children is that they too can oftentimes feel the peacefulness and the spirit of the of the nursery. They calm down quite a bit and generally can be pretty engaged. It's harder though, for sure.
It is
Yeah.
harder. One time we had a little girl who had been so emotionally traumatized by her past nursery experience that when we came in as nursery leaders, she would not come. In fact, her mother and father said when they would drive by the church during the week, she would see the church building and start to cry. So we had to take special measures when we were called. We changed the room. So we didn't go into the same room she was used to. We chose a different room. We had to go to her house and visit with her. I hand make toys, and so I hand made her this beautiful doll so that she could bring it to church with her, which turned out to be kind of a bad thing because right during the sacrament, she's throwing this doll around the chapel to see her
Nice.
fly, and I was sorry about that, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
So after a few times of that and us going to her home, she actually liked nursery, and then she couldn't wait to start coming. But you never know what kind of things in a child's mind are traumatic. This girl hadn't been abused by anyone. It was just her past experience in that old nursery was it was upsetting to her. I don't know if there were too many kids, if the leader didn't engage her, if she fell down once and had this traumatic memory, but we had to basically start over with her. And
Yeah.
sometimes with special needs, all you have to do is start over. So you go to the beginning, which is the family, and you visit the family and you make friends with the parents and you engage the child in their own environment. And so that's helped us a lot with kids that have special situations.
Yeah. You've already mentioned a little bit just sort of that dynamic of working with other adults or when they're in the room or whatnot. And it sounds like for the most part you've been able to handle all the responsibilities of your nursery class. That you didn't need additional adults called to help you in nursery, right?
No. Yeah, we've been able to do it ourselves.
Nice. And anything else you'd say as far as because I know some primaries they'll have several nursery, leaders or teachers or whatever it is. Anything else as far as that adult dynamic that still needs to be said?
I think just better, in my opinion, is better to split your nursery than to just put everybody in one big room with lots of adults and lots of kids. I think
And a ton of fruit snacks, so.
yeah, the experience for the children I think will be a lot better if you make the choice to split the nursery, to the extent that you can.
Yeah.
And I think also bringing in novel items or ideas can really help that child who is reticent to come. So, like for snack time, we will often bring in the apple peeler corer. Some people haven't seen these, but you put the
Oh, yeah.
apple on it, you twist the handle, and
Uh-huh.
it rotates the fruit and peels and cores it. The children can't wait for that to come. And the first time they see it, they're kind of like struck by it. And it's a simple device, but we have to remember for a child who's new on the planet, they've never seen some of the things we bring in. Sometimes I'll bring in a bird nest and put it on the center of the table. And I won't even say anything about it. I'll just put it there and I'll wait till they ask me, what is that? And maybe that day we're talking about families. So I'll talk about how the birds have families. And when we bring in novel things, objects, ideas, that can really settle a child. You would think novelty would make them more excitable or upset, but actually, when their brain is super engaged in studying a thing, they kind of forget that they're in a new place. They forget that their parents aren't there. They forget that they're separated from their families because they're so engaged in whatever we've brought in that there's really no place in the brain for fear. So that's what we try to do a lot, is bring in things that the children will, maybe they've never seen that thing before. What is that? And it's really cool to watch them shut down those fearful or anxious feelings and really come into what we're doing together. It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to go back to nursery. This is awesome. It's so
We
important.
all want to start over.
Well, and even just like I'm just it makes me reflect on callings I haven't enjoyed or that haven't that I haven't enjoyed. And I thought, well, maybe I was just doing it wrong. Maybe there was a better way. And so I think anybody who's just not enjoying their calling can step back and maybe reassess and say, maybe I could do this differently and in a way that I'd really enjoy it. And that and inspiration flows. So.
Right. And I think too with nursery, less is more. I know that's a common saying, but when adults pull out toys for nursery kids, they open the closet and the kids just pull out toys. Well, what a child will do is they'll dump everything on the floor.
Yep.
And actually, if you read the nursery manual, it says every child should be given 1.5 toys.
Huh.
Not that you would half a toy, but
Right.
that's
On
the
average.
number, right? That the church suggests. And they said if a child is done with that 1.5 amount of toys, they get to go and trade it in, and the adult controls the toy closet. We do not let the children just open it and have a free for all. They have to come and ask us, if they can speak. If not, they can show us that they want something else. And so we put that one back, we pull out a new one, and they can continue playing. But we don't do that. Again, chaos is not happy for children. You think it would be because at home they dump everything out, but actually less voices in the room, less children, less toys, less talking. We have found that if we talk less and just listen to them more,
Hmm.
we get a lot better response. We really have to trim things back when we're in nursery.
Yeah. And I love that emphasis on, as far as managing the toy closet and whatnot, because it sounds like with the time constraints that you feel, you don't have time for cleanup time, right? Like you just need to be moving on to the next thing,
It's only an hour. It's a sacred hour, but it's only an hour. You really don't have a lot of time to do everything
Yeah.
you'd like to do in an hour.
Well, this is fantastic. Any other point, principle, random tip that we need to squeeze in here before we wrap up, or did we do a good job?
Well, Jim did mention one thing today that I'd forgotten about is when we first started nursery, we didn't have this item, and then quickly on we bought it. We went on to Amazon. This isn't a push for any particular product or company. And we found this preschool pocket hanging wall thing. And we hang it up on the chalkboard in every nursery we're in. Each child has their own pocket. We take a photo of them, we put the photo in the pocket so they know that's their safe pocket. Because some kids will bring in, a blankie, toys. Sometimes during nursery, they want to take their shoes off. And so everything that's theirs goes in that pocket. And when they're done with their art project, we make a big point of showing them it's going in your pocket. In fact, when they first arrive, we will point to each picture and say their name. Is Jonah here? Yep, there he is. Is Sarah here? Yep, there she is. And they love to see you point to their face up on the wall with their pocket, with their stuff. And sometimes they'll even take their stuff, give it to you, and ask you to put it in their pocket. And then when the parents come, the parents empty out that pocket and go home. Such a small, practical thing, but it has made a huge difference in how comfortable the children feel when they're in nursery with us.
Wow, that's so good. Jim and Marla, you need a 9-hour masterclass for nursery. So
Yeah.
this is hour one.
We've just done it so long that I think
Yeah.
after a while you figure out quickly what works, what doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Well, you've definitely blessed so many lives just from the discussion today. So, um,
Come visit us in Salem sometime. I'm sure we'll be nursery
We'll
leaders
be in the
for more
nursery. You know where to go.
time.
nice. I bet being released from the nursery, you sort of feel this the sadness of it all.
Very much so. We go through a few weeks of just talking about each child. When we go home, we talk about them and laugh with stuff they did. And we have very much kind of a couple weeks of sadness and kind of a mini grief when we're released
Yeah.
from nursery. It's not, we don't get to have the same interactions with them and their family after that. So when we're called to nursery, we are on fire. It's just really great. And just a plug here for couples, it's really good for our relationship
Oh,
to
cool.
serve in nursery together because it's something we're working on during the week together. We'll think of fun things we can do for them or with them. Um, and when we're in the class, we call each other Brother and Sister West. And so they quickly learn the familiar social constructs of language in the ward.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
brother so and so, that's sister so and so. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We love nursery.
Love it. Awesome. Well, this has been so encouraging and so many great tips. And I know there's so many people grateful for you sharing your perspective here. So, the last question I have, and I'll let each of you answer this. Maybe we'll start with you, Jim, and you can have the final word, Marla. But as you reflect on your time as nursery leaders, how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
I think being in nursery, I think, has really taught me um, the sacred experience with children, and better appreciate the love that the Savior has for His children. As I get a chance to work with little kids and see them as they're in those formative years, being introduced to the gospel and trying to make it um, something that they look forward to. And it certainly has really helped me as I've done that calling. It's certainly one I've loved, and I've done a lot of very fun callings that I just look forward to. Nursery is probably at the top of my list, actually.
Marla, what about you?
For me, I think it's been good to let go of my ego, because when you're in nursery, it's never really about you. It's always about them. And I think too, when people ask me, wouldn't you rather be serving somewhere else? Or I've had people make comments like, you got called to nursery? What a waste of talent. And I think about that and I think, well, you know what? It's about letting go of your ego, because Jesus wasn't about how cool he was. We know how cool he was. We know how cool he is. But he wasn't about that. Every time you see an interaction with Jesus in the scriptures, he is never saying it about himself. It's about that person he's interacting with. And he doesn't do a group think. He doesn't say, oh, well, I'll only lead 5,000 people because that's more important than leading one. But he doesn't do that. He always gets the individual and meets them where they're at. And I think nursery is so important because we have to let go of our egos. Those children are never going to remember us. How many people remember being 3 or younger? Not many humans can do that. So we watch these children grow up, and even in our very ward, they don't remember who we were and how much effort and love we put into them and their class time. But it doesn't matter, because it's not about us or our ego. It's about we built that peaceful feeling in them so that they will wake up and say, I can't wait to go to church. Church is a safe place. I'm loved. I feel happy there. Something feels good about church. That's what we want. And if they forget about us in 2 years, that's okay, because we did our job. I think that's how Jesus operates. I think the Holy Ghost especially operates that way, because in the Latter-day Saint Church, we talk about the Holy Ghost, but we really don't know who that individual is. And that individual has to have absolutely no ego to be such an important member of the Godhead and to rarely be mentioned or thought of. And so for us, I think nurseries really taught us to kind of let go of ourselves and not expect to get something out of church, but to put it in.